So this is going to be the last video in the character controller setup, the last video in this first milestone of our beat 'em up project. And in this video, we're going to set up taking damage for our character. So why don't we just jump right into it? And we're going to start with the, let me get this in default stuff. We're going to start right into our animator window. So there's a few hurdles we have when playing our damage animations, and I'll show you what they are. First of all, why don't we get all the animations related to damage, hurt, fall, and block, and we'll save jump and projectile, and we'll just kind of get them out of the way here. So how are we going to set up our hurt animations? Because we need to think about a few things when considering this, like basically how the mechanics of the game are going to play. Are you going to be invulnerable while you're attacking? Can you take damage when you're idle and when you're walking? Can you take damage when you're blocking? Do you take a little bit of damage? Do you get knocked back when you fall down? So all of these are things we're going to have to take into account when examining the game here. So why don't we go ahead and set up a block state real quickly. All right. So I'm going to have block right here, kind of opposite of attack. We're going to make all the use of this real estate as we can here. And any state will be important in a second. Well, I want to be able to block if I'm walking or if I'm idle. All right. So why don't we figure that out real quick? If I hit play, let's see where we're at right now. I'm walking around. All right, we got a few things we need to probably fix a little bit. We don't want to be able to move while we're attacking, and we probably don't want to be able to move while we're blocking. So why don't we go ahead and set up something where we stand still if we're attacking. And that's going to be a pretty easy line of code. All right, so why don't we open up our code, go to scripts, controller script, and we're going to create just a line of code in our update field right here. I want to maximize this. We're just going to go to our update, and underneath our state machine, I'm going to create a comment, control speed based on commands, I guess. I don't know. That'll be good. So we want to be able to make sure that we're not walking when we're blocking or attacking or anything like that. So we're going to do a few conditional checks real quickly. So if our current state, that's where this machine state is going to come in handy, right? If our current state equals our idle state, or our current state equals our walk state, then we're going to say movement speed equals walk movement speed. Else, meaning if these two states are not currently being activated or in use, our movement speed is going to equal our attack speed. What is it? What did I call it? Attack movement speed. All right. These 4 lines of code are basically going to check what state we're in. Remember our second video or so, or third video or so, in which we created our state machine that constantly tells us what animation state we're in. Now we can say if we're currently idle or if we're currently walking, our movement speed is going to equal whatever walk movement speed we've done. Else, if we're blocking or if we're attacking or if we're getting hit, our movement speed is going to equal our low value attack movement speed. So we're going to hit Control S here. Let's go back to our gambit box here. So now you can see my walk speed is pretty high and my attack speed is pretty low. Well, we got a little bit of an error here. Let's see what we got. Let's see, 142. I think I had an extra bracket that I didn't need right there. The result of my if-else statements. Yep, I'm hit Control S to fix that extra little bracket. Now my errors go away. I'm going to hit play to maximize. So now I'm able to walk like normal, but when I attack, you can see my speed drops down dramatically. All right. In fact, if you don't want to be able to move your character at all, we can set our attack movement speed to 0. So now when we are running and we attack, we stand completely still. This is going to be useful for whenever we're doing damage and taking damage. Now we can't cheat around and float around the map with just those 4 lines of code. So now that we got that set up, I'm going to show you our state machine working now. I'm going to clear this. So now we're in idle state. I'm attacking, attack 1, 2, 3 state. I'm walking. And now we're just able to tell what state we're in. And our state machine really came in clutch with controlling our movement speed, like so right there. All right, so why don't we set up some block code real quickly. All right, I'm going to unplay that. All right, so let's skip some lines and let's do a comment. And let's call this block. And this is going to introduce looping and not looping animations. So with block set up, how are we going to code this? Well, let's figure it out. Let's say we're going to block with middle mouse button click. If input dot get mouse button 2, that corresponds to our middle mouse button. Oh, I'm typing all kind of crazy stuff. So if that happens, well, what do we want to do? We want to activate block animation. All right, so how do we activate our block animation? Well, let's go to our animator window, and let's make another parameter. And let's make another Boolean, and let's call this block. All right, great. So let's make a transition from idle to block. Let's set up our fade time like we're used to, so it's really slow. No exit time, and we want to set our condition to block equals true. So if block equals true, we're going to transition from idle to block, like so. And we want to be able to block while we're walking too. So let's make a transition from walk to block. And that's true. No exit time. Did I set no exit time for the other one? I'm going to go back and check. Yeah, no exit time. Because we want to go straight from idle into block. And if I'm done blocking, I want to go straight back into my idle state. So we'll go make a transition from block to idle. Give it the block Boolean, and then if it's false, we're going to go into idle. There we go. So if I go back to my code, I've got my block Boolean set up, and I got my transitions set up with their transitional conditions set up perfectly. All right. So let's go to my code and now activate block animation. We know what to do now, right? We're going to go animator dot set bool, just like for the attacks, and we're going to go to block. That's the Boolean I want to set true. True. And then, of course, let's do an else. Same kind of logic here. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste, Control C to copy, paste that in. And now all I have to do is set that to false. Control S to save. And now I have my code logic that drives my Boolean block parameter over here, which is connected to my transitional conditions, which drives the transitions between my 3 animation states right here. Let me do a maximize real quick so you can see what's going on. All right, so we're blocking, but as I hold the block button, this looks stupid. That's not how somebody blocks. They don't just freak out like that and keep blocking. So what can we do? We kind of just want to play this animation and maybe stick in the last frame when our bow staff is up in a block position. Well, that's really easy. We're going to double click our block node and uncheck loop time. And look how easy that is. Now we're stuck blocking. And we can block either direction here and transition back into our attacks. Like so. So now we've set up our block. And what we might want to do for future coding purposes when we start setting up our combat mechanics, why don't we go and create a Boolean flag in our character controller script right here. Let's call this public bool. is blocking. That way we can check and see whether or not we're blocking here. So if I save it, now we have a is blocking flag. That'll come in handy whenever we're defining our combat mechanics, and we can tell the enemy that we're attacking whether we're blocking or not. So what we need to do now is we need to account for that Boolean flag we just made is blocking inside of our block code right here. So why don't we say is blocking equals true, and then is blocking equals false, not hyphen false. There we go. Control S to save that script. I've messed that up a few times so far. So I want to unmaximize this. So when I play, keep your eye on our is blocking Boolean flag, and I'm blocked. So I'm blocking, and you can see now I have a nice public variable that I can access for whenever I want to tell the enemy that I'm blocking or not. And we can even see here, we transition nicely into our block. Even though it's looping like this, we're stuck on our last frame because we have loop time turned off. And now our block is set up really nicely. So now let's take care of our hurt animation. All right. So let's go right under our block here. Let's create some loans. And we're going to go is hit. And let's call this test. Because for right now, we're going to assign our is hit animation to an input. Input dot get key down key code dot, let's just say Q for right now, like so. Oh, I forgot a parentheses there. So if I press the key code, we're going to drive the animation in my animator window. So hit animation code. So before, I'm going to hit Control S there, and now we need to make a new parameter here. It's just getting to be like clockwork, hopefully, at this time. And we're going to go is hit for our Boolean flag in our animator window. And what we're going to do different now is we want to be able to get hit in almost any state here. Okay? So with our any state, well, you know what? I'm thinking if we're in block, I might mess it up. Basically, this little any state means no matter what state we're in, if we call this is hit transition, we make a transition from any state to hurt and give it the condition of is hit to true. No matter what animation state we're in, we're going to access or queue or activate our hurt animation. So let's fix this real quickly. Get our transition times. Our hit animation is like really small. So I'm going to zoom in with my mouse wheel like so. And we have no exit time because we want to go straight into our hurt animation. And then from hurt, why don't we transition, in fact, I want to bring it down to like right here maybe. And from hurt, we're going to transition back into idle as soon as my is hit equals false. We're going to leave exit time turned on. We're going to get our fade times just right. So no matter what state we're in, and that might be a problem when we're blocking because block is a state, and we're saying if any state is occurring and we get hit, no matter if we're blocking, but I'll tell you what, we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it down later in the road when we're doing our combat mechanics. I just want to introduce what the any state node does in our animator window. All right. So keep in mind, we're tying this to get key code down right now to Q. In the future, this will be handled with collision whenever we get our combat mechanics set up. But for right now, we're going to say animator dot set bool is hit to true, else animator dot set bool is hit to false. So now I can test this out by pressing Q on the keyboard. Remember, this will be substituted out for collision detection in the future. We're just setting up a test right now. So if I hit play, uh, 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 uh. So that's the problem I'm talking about. I'm blocking, and I press Q like I'm getting hit. I still get hit. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to exclude from any state, to exclude block from there. I mean, to be honest, we could just create a bunch of connections from any of these. So for instance, we could say we can make connections from idle to walk to attack 1 to attack 3 all the way to hurt and leave block out. So we might have to do that in the future, but for right now, we're going to do any state right now. And if I can't figure out a way to get block excluded from any state, which sounds like I might not be able to, we might have to make transitions from idle, from walk, from attack 1 to attack 2 to attack 3, all pointing to hurt, because we want to be able to cue the hurt animation, whether we're mid-attack or if we're mid-walk or mid-idle. All right? But for right now, I'm going to call hurt a success, because we got our hurt animation playing, and we got our is-hit parameter set up, and we're good to go. All right. So now, why don't we handle getting knocked down? And getting knocked down is going to be a fun little exercise. We're going to have to use a coroutine for it. All right. So why do we have to have a coroutine for not getting knocked down or for falling? Well, we want to be able to control how long we are knocked down and how long we're laying on the ground knocked out. So that's going to have to be something we're going to use a coroutine for, and a little bit of a different way of accessing and playing our fall node. So this is kind of a extra little bonus on learning how we can interact with our animator window with our code. But first, why don't we go ahead and make a knocked down Boolean flag. All right. And we're going to have to go to our code now. And let's go ahead and set up a comment called knockdown. This is just for readability purposes, everybody. And say, let's do another input right now. Remember these, why don't we say this is actually knockdown test? Because I don't want you guys to confuse that. This is how we're going to handle damage in the game. Input dot get key down. Let's say key code letter E, I guess, for right now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start a coroutine we're going to define in a second. Start coroutine. Actually, start coroutine. We're going to call this knocked down coroutine. And it's red because we haven't made it yet. So right under void flip, let's make our coroutine, i.e. numerator. Remember, coroutines allow us to add a pause between different actions. So we're going to add a pause between getting knocked down and getting back up. Knocked down. Let's call it, let's see, what do we call it? Knocked down? Yeah, I've said knocked down like 5 times in a row there. And that's our coroutine, and let's just hit it up. Well, first, we need to set up a can't move. Well, why don't we just do the basic stuff? Let's just learn how we can cue the animation without accessing our knockdown Boolean here. So I'm going to go animator.play, and we're going to call this fall. All right. So basically, instead of accessing our Boolean parameter we set up right here, I made that so we can tell the difference between accessing and playing our animations versus these parameters here, to just outright using animator.play to play fall there. All right. And then we're going to do a yield return new. And then we're going to add our wait for seconds here. And then why don't we have a public variable called knocked down time right here that we can set. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to Copy that. I'm going to make a new public variable at the beginning of my script here. And let's call this public float knockdown time, like so. So we'll scroll back down to my knockdown coroutine function right here, knockdown time. And then let's do animator.play idle. We're going to go straight into idle. Not idle state. Forgot the quotations. All right. So if we hit Control S, if I press E on my keyboard, I'm going to start my knockdown test. And that's going to start my knockdown coroutine. It's going to come down here. It's going to play my fall animation. It's going to return, wait for a few seconds. Then it's going to go back to my idle animation. So let's see what happens. See if that works pretty good. What's going on? I'm okay. I know what I need to do. I didn't give my knockdown time value anything. So let's say 2 seconds. All right, that was crazy. For 2 seconds, I'm just flying in the air over and over again. Ooh, I know what I need to do. Let's double click fall and uncheck loop time. Let's see what happens there. There we go. But that's weird. I can face directions on the ground. I don't like that. I need to be able to just completely lock out all movement options real quickly. So why don't I have something like can move equals false. And I need to go up here and make a new public variable called can move. All right. Let's do a public bool called can move. All right. So when we're down here, how do I do this? I have a variable called can move that I'm able to flag on and off. So it'll keep me from being able to switch directions when I'm on the ground. Well, I really want to be able to dictate whether or not I can flip. So I'm going to navigate to my flip right here. And why don't we add one more condition here? Can move is true. Can move equals true. And do the same thing down here. So what did I just do there? Well, basically, this is my flip conditions. If I'm moving to the left and I'm not facing right and I can move, then I'm going to flip. So why don't we come down to my knockdown coroutine right here, and let's set, well, we already got can move down to false. So can move, when I get up, I'll be able to set can move to true. And let's see what happens there. So when I do my coroutine, I got this can move the false. So when I'm falling and on the ground, I can't move or flip my direction. Yield for wait for my knockdown time. And then after that's over, I go back to my idle animation, and now can move equals true. So my flip arguments right here can now work. All right, so let's try that. You know what we need to do? We need to go in and in my start, we need to, just like we did facing right, we need to set can move equals true. So now that when we do our flips, where's our flips at? Now when we do our flips, can move will be true, and we'll be able to access our flip functions. So I'm going to hit Gambit right here. And now you can see a can move and facing right. So as soon as I press play, these are both true. So now I can switch directions again. I can attack like normal. So let's test our fall now. There we go. You'll notice when I press E, our can move goes to false. And when I get up, it goes to true. So now You can hear me pressing. I can't go left or right. But when I get up, now I can. So that's how we'll fix being able to face left or right here. Well, whenever we're getting knocked down, do we just want to fall straight on the ground, or maybe do I get pushed back, like knocked back while we're falling down too? Why don't we add a little bit of fun with that? Why don't we add some physics that adds force to when we're getting knocked back? All right, so how are we going to do that? Let's go to our knockdown coroutine, and let's add some physics here. All right, if facing right equals false, then rigid body, we're going to call our rigid body physics here. We're going to add force, and we're going to say transform dot to the right times, what are we going to times it by? Let's have some kind of knockback force variable, like so. So once again, I've created a new variable without initializing it. So I need to go to the top of my code here, and let's do a public float knockback force. So now I've initialized this variable that I'll be able to use in my add force code right here. And then let's see. Oh, transform that, right? That's right. I need a parentheses right there. Add force and what direction we add in force and by how much. There we go, right there. Else if facing right equals true. Basically, we're deciding which way I'm looking, so we know which way to add my knockback force. Rigid body dot add force, not angular drag. Add force. Same thing going on here. Transform right, but now we need to multiply it by -1 times knockback force. All right. So basically, this little code right here is just adding the negative value depending on what direction we're looking. All right, hit Control S like so. All right, and now I have a new. I should have a. Oh, looks like I got some errors here. Facing right equals true. It doesn't like something going on here. I see. I have else instead of else if. That's not fun. There we go. Because if it would have just been else, it wouldn't have had this conditional statement. It would have just been like that. But since I had that, I had to add this if because I want to check something else as well. There we go. So will that fix it? That fixes it? Great. So now I have this new knockback force. And I think we're going to set it to something like 1,000. Is that pretty good? Is that a good knockback force? I don't know. Let's try 3,000. It seems like a big number, but you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. So we're walking. Boom. Now we're getting knocked back. And since we have rigid body physics on it, here's the scene view here. It's just knocking our whole game object back, like so. So if I'm looking this way, now I get knocked back in the direction. Great. So that's basically taking damage in a nutshell. So what I want you guys to do now is, I'm about to write it down here. Projectile. I want you guys to figure out two things here. I want you to figure out how to cue the, projectile node here. And I want you to pick a actual projectile you'll instantiate, like a bullet in the space shooter game. So if I go to my sprites here, well, I haven't accounted for a projectile here. So you know what I need to do? I need to go to my sprites folder, and I need to see if I have a sprite for a charged card. So I'm back from that pause, and now I've gotten my old asset source folder here, And now I need to go back in. Oh, look, I have some great cards here. Wow. There's a lot of stuff going on here. A lot of different frames of animation. I have explosions, like so. It looks like whenever I throw a card, like I can throw 3 cards here and it just comes out in a zoom. What can I do here? You chose a card. Yeah. You can throw it down. I got to figure out what I'm going to do here. Maybe I'll instantiate an animated prefab of this thing going across the screen of like all these little. So you're going to have to pick out what sprite frame and what animation you want to do. Make a prefab of it. Instantiate it at the character whenever you have the code to launch it off. Let's see, let me go to scripts. So it'll be kind of the same thing here. I'll kind of write out the logic here. So we need to have an if statement that checks for right mouse click. You need to have a animator dot set bool call right here. You need to instantiate a prefab, instantiate a projectile prefab, like a bullet or so. Projectile let's say for Gambit, charged card prefab, like so. So after you instantiate the charged card prefab, how do you do that? Well, remember whenever we had our attack 1 sprite frame stuff? You're going to make you're going to go up here and you're going to make a new public sprite variable called something like projectile sprite hit frame, or maybe throw frame. This will be the sprite where the actual projectile is instantiated when the actual projectile is instantiated and thrown from the person. And you'll need to do a check. When the projectile throw frame equals the projectile throw frame in the sprite renderer. Alright, that's when you'll instantiate the charged card. Or actually, we got these two mixed up. Alright, so do a check when the projectile throw frame equals the projectile throw frame in the sprite renderer. The same kind of logic we were using to activate our attack boxes and our combo attack. Then you'll instantiate a projectile that has a mover script attached to it, just like our space shooter game. All right, I'm being vague here. I want you guys to figure this out. But you have all the tools here. So you may want to pull up your space shooter project and see how bullets were instantiated and use that same kind of logic here. The only thing different here is we're setting a Boolean in our animator window to cue the animation of the projectile throw. And we're doing a check to check whenever that projectile throw frame equals the throw frame that's being rendered. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up my Gambit character that I've already got made, and I'll show you the animation I'm talking about. So here is my Gambit that I've already set up, and you already see I have the logic to cue the projectile throw. So what we want to do maybe is whenever it hits the frame of animation where he's actually thrown it, that's when you would want to instantiate the card being thrown. So boom, instantiate. And you're going to have a prefab of a sprite kind of like this. You don't have to have it animated. Just pick a good sprite. I think what I would use for Gambit would be probably this one right here, kind of like a charge card that's being thrown. And you're going to have this sprite. You're going to have this sprite travel to the right, just like a bullet with a mover script attached to it that you're going to have to create. Travel to the right, and you're going to have to give it a hitbox so it can pick up collision. And don't worry about it colliding with anything quite yet. And also, for the sake of cleaning up the scene, have a destroy time script on it. So after it travels for a few seconds, it destroys itself when it goes off screen. So after 5 seconds, it destroys the game object. All right, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to create a right click to cue the projectile animation. You're going to pick which frame the actual projectile will leave his hand and start going, or if you're Cyclops, what frame he actually shoots the laser out of his eye, or if you're like Wolverine, you can kind of create like an animation where he does like a huge hit and like I don't know, claw blast comes out of his hands. We're going to stretch it a little bit here. So I know Wolverine's a popular character and he doesn't have projectile attacks, but we're going to fudge it here. You're just going to pick kind of like a attack that, even though it's melee, you're going to create a projectile for him. So you're going to create the projectile, instantiate it when Gambit's hand extends right there. It's going to be instantiated, move right. It's going to have a projectile hitbox attached to it, or a projectile attack box attached to it, and it's going to destroy itself after a certain amount of time. So that's your little tricky assignment for this milestone in the game we're making. And by the end of this milestone of Chapter 3, you should have a nice character that you can control just like a beat 'em up, with projectiles, the ability to block, the ability to take damage, the ability to be knocked down and get back up. That's what we're going to do. That's what you guys should have by the end of all these videos. I'm giving you guys 2 weeks to do this. Get an early start on it. At least watch the videos all the way through. In the first few days, the assignment's given. Start attempting it, working through the videos towards the end of the week, and save that last week to worry about any bugs that you can't overcome and to figure out how to get your projectile going. Please, please, please don't wait till the last second to start this chapter up. Anyway, I guess I should have given you that information at the beginning of the videos instead of at the end. But anyway, I'm just saying I want you guys to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to do this, because catastrophic failure can and will happen. It's already happened to a few people so far this semester. Just be aware of that. All right, so by the end of these 2 weeks, you should have a character you can control, and our beat 'em up is really starting to take off now. Even though we don't have an environment or any kind of AI or any kind of combat, just being able to control a character like this is pretty cool. Oh, what the heck? Did I just do a jump? That's extra credit. If you really feel like you're getting this, feel like you can add a jump, then do so. But it's not part of the assignment. But if I hit spacebar, I can make my character jump. All right. There you go. All right. So I'll see you guys in the emails. And in 2 weeks from now, we're going to start looking at enemy AI and enemy controllers. Really basic stuff, so don't get too intimidated when you hear AI. But we're going to hit it up, make a cool beat 'em up game, and you're going to have something really cool to show by the end of it. Thanks, guys.